Welcome.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. And there's Jared all at once.
Well, he has the cool headphones, so should have brought my
He
cool
sure
headphones.
does. He's got all the fun toys.
Thank you. Thank you. I believe that's for me. And we're live. So welcome. Thank you for your
sure
patience.
Jumping right into it.
What's going on?
We all came on at the same time.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'll let Jason run it down. Hey everybody. Welcome to Outbound 2.0. We're super excited to be here with a special guest today.
Jared, I need to get caught up. I thought you were going to be running with this one.
Oh, perfect. So Amisha, thank you for coming.
Excited to be here.
And apologies for the delay. Yeah, wanted to jump in. Can you give a bit about your background and what led you to where you're currently at?
Sure. So, hi, I'm Amisha Gandhi. I have been marketing for over 20 years. I started a startup called City Search with City Guide. So on the B2C side of the house in marketing, and pretty much did every role in marketing and ended up more on the agency side. And so spent a couple of years in advertising world, PR, and marketing communications for companies working with brands like Gap and Intel, HP, Accenture, and got a taste of the B2B world, and then ended up at Google, and then moved on to SAP and spent quite a number of years at SAP doing everything from corporate communications, corporate planning, operations, and then leading up mobile marketing when they launched mobile applications at SAP, and moved into and eventually launched a new kind of marketing called influencer marketing at a time where not a lot of B2B companies were doing it. And I guess you can say that's my claim to fame in the marketing world. And after having done influencer marketing as a demand gen function, led the cloud business group at SAP. And then I came over to Tipalti to head up their marketing organization. And Tipalti is a fintech company. We do accounts payable and global payments. So it's a very exciting run I've had and continue to have.
So I love that. Now I typically ask people to debunk a myth, right? I'm curious to hear your debunk a myth about revenue today, right? From your standpoint.
I think that everyone looks at revenue as bringing in leads and how quickly we can qualify those leads. And I think one of the big things in marketing that we really need to look at is when something is qualified, how do we get it to a faster close or push it along the funnel? People do think about that, and they think of ABM and they think of other things, but do they think about experiences? Do they think about how many touches does it take? And then not just kind of like trying to quantify those, but really think about the qualitative experience that people are having. I think we just look at the numbers and we start doing that way too much instead of taking a step back and also looking at the experience the prospect is having in the buying journey. So we've gotten way too much into data, and we're sort of leaving the art a little bit behind. And that is where you're going to be missing on the revenue side.
This is big, right? Because there's a lot of marketing that's quote unquote qualitative, and they're often not the first hires, which is ironic. They're not. You could say brand might be part of this, but from your standpoint, how do you make the qualitative quantitative? Because at a certain point, you're speaking to your board, you're speaking to the market. Like, you have to connect some dots, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to make sure that your DG engine is strong and solid in place, right? So if that's the first thing you have to do is make sure that it's not only solid, you're bringing numbers, but that it's connected and that you have a strategic DG machine, right? When you're building a company, you're going to build, and you need to be very tactical in DG. As you evolve as a company, you need to be more strategic, make sure that when you're doing events and when you're doing campaigns, that things are connected so that you're pushing people along the funnel, right? And you're doing that. But then you want to increase, as you get bigger as a company, you want to increase your branded searches against your competitors. How do you do that? You can do that by doing some very smart DG brand awareness in LinkedIn. That's a DG program, right? It's low intent, but it's still a DG program, but you're getting that brand lift with the audience you want to reach, right? So what is the content you're delivering to the specific audience you want to reach, right? Like at Tipalti, it's okay if my mom doesn't know about Tipalti, but I want everyone in finance to know about Tipalti. So that's how I'm going to market, right? I think sometimes people get lost in the brand thinking, oh, it should be like this, air cover. Brand should not also just be brand cover. Brand should be a DG builder. So you want to increase your branded searches, right? So you want to start expanding your brand awareness in that very strategic way. And that's how you can bring in the qualitative. And so before you do something like that, do a brand benchmark. So you know where your brand is against your competitors, and then do it after you've done some activities to see the movement and where you've moved the needle and where you haven't moved the needle. Do you test with your customers, your content, is it resonating with your audience, right? So do testing as well on your qualitative. That's how you're going to start getting some really good results and KPIs.
So yeah, talking about KPIs and coming from influencer marketing, right? Like it's so easy to wear this hat and say, okay, influencer UTM, how many people clicked it? What did it convert at? All of that. But you're opening this to a bigger conversation, right? Like, cause sure, that's part of it. Sure. Them screenshotting impressions on LinkedIn because you can't scrape it the same as other platforms, whatever. Yeah. But what other KPIs? You started talking on them. Like, what KPIs matter to measure this?
I mean, you really want to look at, are you really getting qualified apps in what you're doing? Which piece of content is working to help you do that, right? Which piece of content are keeping people engaged and coming back, right? So if you have a piece of content, someone didn't do a form fill, but you realize on this specific page, people are scrolling down, they're spending a lot more time. See what's on the page and see how you can replicate in other places. So you are creating more engagement, right? Because if you have someone that's really engaged, they're more likely to come back. They're more likely to engage with you in the future if they're not ready to buy right now. And you don't want to talk to somebody who's not ready to buy right now, or maybe not interested, but they know you now, right? So you want to have that first piece is get that engagement. If they come and they drop off, you didn't get the engagement. Why didn't you get the engagement? Why aren't they making it past the scroll? So something that we did was we were noticing that not a lot of people were scrolling past on the homepage, but clicking, we revamped our website, but clicking to our product pages. And so we did some testing and realized, people don't have, we looked at our competitors. Why are people spending more time there? Because they understood the use case of what our competitors did. Because we have two businesses, we actually ended up making a choose your own adventure right there on the home screen. And you could choose the use case. And from that, we found what more people clicked that because then they self-identified what they're interested in. And then they were spending 4 minutes versus 1.5 minutes with us.
And you're talking currently explore AP automation versus global payments.
Yeah, because they're two different use cases, right? So we have one which is more finance team and one which could be a head of product. It could be an IT, right? So you have to really figure out what your business is, right? And you can use content, you can use journeys to do that. And then you get from that qualitative to the quantitative, right? And they're able to deliver these storylines are resonating. And that's where we need to play more and do more of. And that can impact everything you're doing from PR to your content plays to what blogs are we going to do? What kind of podcast are we going to do? It really can help direct, your quantitative can direct your qualitative and vice versa, right? You need that to play together. We should always be testing. I don't think people do enough testing and figuring out what's working.
You have a growth person laughing here. And when I say growth, like growth with the objective gates that are growth, not just growth, calling it growth, but it's really marketing or it's really small business sales or whatever it is. So, but
I've got one question off of that.
Of course.
As Jared was indicating and why I was laughing, like I'm very data driven. You're absolutely speaking my language and what you're talking about. I wonder what you're doing or what opportunities you're seeing or successes you've had leveraging that sort of broader than just what's going on in marketing and demand gen. Because obviously these are, really powerful signals kind of org wide if you can get that distributed and, get people to actually start, paying attention to that and incorporating that into their motions and strategies and how they're doing, bits and pieces of what they're doing, whether that's, product, sales, support, success, all of those. These are really, really powerful signals that it's hard for them to get to, especially from a quantitative standpoint.
Yeah, so we share that knowledge right across. And then with sales, we share that with sales engagement so they can include that in their training materials. These things are working really well. So when you tell the story, this is how you want to frame it. It's resonating with the audience. We have a community, we started a customer community last year called Luminaries, and it's a closed door
Nice.
customer only. So we are able to test out things with our customers because there are in our ICP. Does this work? We're going to launch some new brand look and feel. We're very excited. It's very different than anyone in our space. And we actually test it out with our customers, right? So make sure that you can do it and then share it with everyone. But then with sales, we want to look at your playbook. Is it a connected playbook? So if you're putting a campaign out, does sales understand the campaign you're putting out? So when the prospect comes in, they don't start a conversation from left field. The prospect is like, I am interested in AP. Why are you talking to me about digital? Or I'm interested in, we just launched card. I really am interested in that. That's the form I filled out. Why are you talking to me about something I don't care about? And then they feel like they're having this they're repeating themselves, right? And then they move on in the sales cycle from the SDR to AE, they're repeating themselves again. So everyone needs to make sure you have a playbook with sales and that you have that partnership with sales. So when you launch a campaign, they understand the campaign and, hey, are they targeting their top 10, 15 accounts against this that fit, right? And that's what you should be doing when you launch a campaign. You work with sales or you look in your CRM and make sure what are the accounts that you're targeting and sales is aware so that when people start coming in the door, it's that experience that you're having, but that will actually help your revenue go up, right? And your leads that you're bringing in, right? And the people that are becoming qualified leads and qualified opportunities then are the right ones, and everyone's speaking the same language and we're selling in the same way, right?
Have you seen?
Oh,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you align your outbound sales efforts with marketing or with sales?
Both, right? We have to outline what is the goal, like what are we reaching and where do we, we actually did a whole deep dive of data in marketing and also in sales, and we always compare notes where, which accounts, right? Which accounts came in on a certain campaign, how fast and which channels, which content, we look at all of that. So now we know, like, hey, everyone that has this persona that is interested, like we have on the AP side, ERP for a certain ERP closes faster than everything else in this company size. Mm-hmm. We share that with sales and we say in marketing channels, this is what's working the best. They'll say in sales channels with outbound sales, this is what's working best. And then we look at the data and oftentimes it's very similar. And where we find if there's a discrepancy, then we have to talk about and figure out why that is, right? So then we could maybe shift or create a different campaign that's targeting the accounts the way they need to, right? It's a continual conversation. You can't just say, okay, we're launching, everyone go do, you have to keep in touch and constantly have that touch point of communication.
And I was more going along lines of like,
I went in a different tangent. Sorry.
No. It's spot on. I'm like, so let me be a little more explicit. Do you align sales development as a function to marketing? Or do you align it as a function to sales at a high level?
SDRs are in sales at Tipalti. That's how we have it.
Because if you had aligned it to marketing, would it be different?
No.
Or would it be easier?
It's not easier. It wouldn't be different for us the way we're set up because we meet with the SDR managers every week. So our leaders in DG talk to the SDR managers every single week. And then we also touch base as a leadership team as well to kind of make sure. So if they start getting something and say, hey, we're getting a lot of garbage this week, what's going on? We can immediately act on it and not wait for months later, right? Some people meet quarterly And then you've lost a whole quarter where you could have adjusted things on PPC, right? We found a lot of bad bots coming in this year, for example. So then we put in something called check. We put that into place, and it ended up paying for itself and actually saving us a lot of money, but it also saved us, right? Time and resource is a big thing. If you have your SDRs working on accounts that are bots and they have to go through all of it, they're wasting countless hours, right? Now we've got rid of that waste, and they're spending their time on things that are, going to actually be qualified, right? So the quality goes up. We wouldn't have caught that if we were talking to them.
It sounds like you've got pretty tight and effective alignment between, these teams, which for most organizations is quite a challenge. I'd love to hear kind of some of the secrets that, have driven that success on your guys' side, because like I said, for a lot of people, that's a sort of never-ending challenge and a nut that a lot never even crack. And so I've got a feeling that, quite a few from the audience are asking themselves exactly that. Like, how do I actually get that type of alignment and get, the teams talking to each other and actually implementing what's going on the other side of it?
I think that kind of alignment comes from the top down. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I joined Tipalti in the first place. That's one of my biggest questions is, how is your sales and marketing work together, right? Because marketing is really there to help reach those outcomes, right, for the company. And that is sales, right? So really understanding that if you have an us versus them attitude, then that's when things start falling apart, right? And so there is no us versus them. If you work at a company, you're both on the same team, right? Literally, you're on the same team. You want the company to win. And does it matter who's right or wrong? And I think that comes from the top, and setting that expectation at the top between the CRO and the CMO, right? You have that alignment, and then it comes down. Your VPs of marketing, your VPs of sales, are they coming together? Is your DG team aligned with SDR team in the right functions? And is your ABM team aligned with field sales? Are your field marketers aligned to field sales, right? And how they work together. You need to, as a leader, make sure that those teams are aligned. So it can't just be at the top and then everybody figure it out. No, it has to happen at all levels, and you should have a process for that, right? Are you having our field marketing team joins the field marketer that's supporting a sales team joins their weekly sales meeting? They're on their team. The field marketer is on that sales team to help ensure their success. And so they're right there on the ground with everybody, right? So if you have something like that versus, I've been in organizations where field marketing, does events, and then they're like, here's your stuff. And then they move on to the next thing. It's like, well, what happened after it was qualified? Did it close? Did you do an ABM? They just, a lot of places marketing is responsible for leads and, and revenue, and they just throw stuff over the transom, and it's like, okay, well, now we did our job. Sales will take it from here. If you do it that way at your company, then that's where a lot of breakdown happens. The us versus them. You don't know what's working in sales. Are we, your product marketers are putting together all these great data sheets and competitive sets. Is it working in the market? Is it resonating in the sales cycle? If you get that feedback, then you can adjust your marketing, right? And vice versa. Are we telling the right story to the market? Does your sales team understand the persona, right? Are they selling in the same way that you're marketing? You want to, that's how you get a lot of misalignments. You have to really do it at the top, and then make sure your teams that are working together are set up for success.
Are there certain key metrics, KPIs, numbers that you're using to drive that alignment? Or, you've talked a lot about having people actually be physically aligned and, part of teams and sitting in on meetings and stuff like that. But is there, on the data side of it, or are you leveraging that? And if so, kind of what are some of those key metrics?
Right. So we're getting to 2023 planning. So we look at, we bring in leads, but how much percentage of them are qualifying and why, and what's the reasons? And we look at that data together with the SDR team. And then we figure out, what do we do more of? What do we do less of? What channels are fruitful? What are not? What's bringing in garbage? What needs, one of the things that we did this year was, okay, maybe some of the things we hold back and we don't pass, we nurture them more. So it allows the SDR team to focus more on the things, the volume, right? Volume is great, but volume is also not great. It also has to be the right quality. So being able to adjust that in real time, and then take a look at those metrics and data together on a weekly, monthly, and then quarterly basis, right? And then we also come up with our goals together. So if they're only going to have a certain amount of a goal and they're going to reach 100%, but we have a goal that's much higher and the volume is much higher, then we're never going to get to our goal as marketing because it's lower. Or if they have a much higher goal and we have a much lower goal, then we're not aligned, right? And that's where people start missing numbers, right? So you have to plan your numbers and come to an agreement that this is how much percentage marketing is going to be able to do realistically, right? And what is the gap? If there's a gap, if there's not a gap, what do we need to figure out that there's not a gap either way? That's when I think a lot of things can go awry. Because then expectations aren't set, right? Everybody's expecting different things. And when they don't get it, people are going to be upset because they're not going to make their numbers, and nobody in sales wants to miss out on their commission, right? That's really the bottom line.
Yeah, you are speaking to the choir. The fact that this is so novel to so many people and so many conversations, it will always be a mystery to me.
Well, I mean, I think I can see that, there are some teams in SAP where, we would just throw things over to the sales organization globally. And then we're like, okay, the regions are going to take, the regions would take and say, this is, so there was a lot of complexity, right? So it's kind of cutting through that complexity and making things simple from a leadership standpoint. Where are the breakdowns happening? And being able to talk about those and saying, what do we do to fix those breakdowns?
Jared, you look like you were going to say something.
No, I mean, I was just going to ask.
Communication is the key. Communication
Yes.
alignment is the key. And a lot of people
Yes.
don't spend the time on that, right? They're just too busy telling each other what's right.
Yep. No, I
Human
tell my team often, to the point that they're probably sick of hearing it. I can't think of a problem in my career that was caused from over communication. And the bulk of the problems that I've run into professionally came from under communication or lack thereof.
Can't agree with
So
you.
it's pretty safe to err on the side of over communicating.
So it sounds like things are going swimmingly, but I'm sure something's keeping you up at night. I'm curious as to what that is. Like, what's top of mind?
I think we're
wearing on
going
you.
into, like everybody else, right? I think, we're going into a recession. We're already in a recession for the most part, right? We're headed into a year where it's uncertain. So, everyone is going to be more smart with their spend, right? So, you want to look at your data, you want to look at your content, what's driving the best journeys, what's giving you the best ROI. And I think people are going to spend, but they're going to be very much more judicious. They're going to look at, what is bringing in the right qualified leads or qualified opportunities, and, what's the most engaging things. But I think that, set aside a small part of your budget, even though we're being very lean, you still want to be able to experiment and test, right? And once you see something is working, you can double down on it. You don't want to lose sight of that, because then you'll get behind your competitors, right? So really think about where that is, right? Look and see, what area and what channels things are happening. Things aren't working and it's not going to work, and they're long shot and they have a huge return horizon, right? Maybe you cut down on some of those activities and you put more money into things that come in better. And it's not the sexiest thing to talk about, but that is something that every single person in marketing is talking about right now. A lot of people are, staying flat or cutting their budgets, right? So how do we bring in the business when we don't have as much, right?
Why is it that marketing budgets are one of the first things to get cut? When
I think it's I think that and hiring, right?
100%. But where there was something, now there's nothing. Hiring, you could freeze it for sure. But
I think in marketing, because I think people think, okay, well, where we could probably just cut brand because that's a nice to have, or we could cut something else because that's not directly a demand gen initiative, right? So, that's a nice to have. You just really need to realize how your buyer journey works. So you don't cut out something that's top funnel, then all of a sudden you're like, what happened? How come nothing, we're dipping, what's happening, right? So really understand your buyer journey to drive efficiency for you. But you need to understand what are the things that are working on the top funnel before just cutting those things off as a line item, right? So
and that's good advice, because that was the follow-up, like the advice that you give others, but you pretty much laid it out there.
It's hard. We've had to make hard decisions, right? So, and what works for us was not going to work for someone else. So you really need to understand the, where all the touch points are and what's working for you.
So what excites you for the future though? It's
I
a tough
think
time, and I understand how people are thinking, but it's also an exciting time.
it is, because it's a little bit unknown, but I think if companies think about how are you helping your customers, right, and your potential prospects, how are you going to make their lives easier and better during this time? That's what is going to be appealing. And I think that's an exciting story to tell. How can we help you get through this time and come out on the other side, right? And that's something that's exciting to do, be able to do for your customers and for your prospects. For me, a customer, the minute somebody hears your brand, they come to your website, they're a customer. It doesn't start when they sign the contract. Everyone's your customer, and right when if they're in your ICP and they come to your site, they're your customer. So how are you going to treat them? Because if you don't treat them really good during the prospect buying journey, then how are you going to treat them once they're a customer, right? So that's how people look at it. And that's why some buying decisions don't get made better on, okay, this is the best technology. It's sometimes this company is going to be a great partner. They will make sure I don't fail. And that's exciting to be that partner for somebody. So I think those are the things that make me really excited.
Nice. And you see the messaging changing now to more towards that from the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone was, we haven't had a recession in so long, right? But everybody right now, especially in tech, there's different industries that were impacted by COVID, sure, right? But in technology, right, we saw more growth. So it's been growth at no cost.
We were impacted. We were over invested, over valuated, over flooded with money.
Right.
With and the irony was that was the opposite of what folks were intending to happen.
Yeah, I mean, but people have just been growing and booming, right? And we're growing at any cost, right? People are like, okay, it's fine. We're just gonna, keep moving, and it's okay that all these things are happening, right? But we all know that eventually equals out, right? But now it's looking at, okay, it's not growth at any, it's growth by being efficient, by being hyper, focused, and what are the right things, right? And so doing less with more, which a lot of us haven't had to think about for a while, right? So really switching the gears up, and then looking at messaging, saying like I said, what is going to help your customer through this time? What are they looking at? What is a concern for the people that in our ICP finance, we're going to recession. How do we help them continue to grow their company? If you bring in this technology, this is how we can best support you through this time and be a good partner, right? So we look at bringing in more of that recession proofing or whatever type of messaging. We've already started that after summer. We already started that. And now when we look at our H1 campaign, it becomes about sustainable growth and themes like that'll resonate with our audience. So you have to think about your audience and what themes, and you can ask them. I would, keep talking to your customers and your prospects and asking them what's top of mind. Influencers in your space, right? They know what their audiences are thinking about. So exciting for me is to do something a little bit more with influencers as well.
Nice. So one thing that you touched upon, obviously things swung pretty far in one direction through COVID and the amount of money being raised and all of that stuff, which invited the growth at any cost mindset and sort of we're gonna go invest in a lot of things that we may not have like a straight path to ROI, or we've not even bothered to track or measure or report on anything like that. But there's also a tendency whenever the pendulum swings to swing too far in the other direction. And so, in that case, oftentimes what you're going to see is people that are focusing solely and myopically on what can we track, straight line to revenue and an ROI, which then leaves some of the things that are less clearly connected, but also vitally important, that oftentimes get left on the cutting room floor within that. So, what are some of your strategies to try and balance those and not have that pendulum swing too far from one side to the other?
I think people will easily cut things out, right? That they're like, okay, this is wastage, or hey, this channel isn't working for me. But you really need to understand what touch points are working and where what you're bringing in. Like, for example, we know on our PPC pages, right, long tail, which pages convert better, right? And which ones, where could they be converting better? How do we maximize the pages that are working? So for us on the AP side, for example, ERP pages, right? We're working, but they're not working as well for us, but they should be. And that's somewhere we really want to grow. And so we're revamping those pages. We know they work. How do we make them better? Right. And then we're looking, global payments, what messages are working, what are not, where do we need to grow and double down on, what are the things that will kind of sunset or put on the side because it's not really driving a lot for us of quality. So you really have to look at those bite-sized chunks and then take a step back and say, okay, now know the adjustments that you made. And then as you're getting into the year, if something starts dipping, take a look where it's dipping and say, oh, you know what? This isn't helping. This we dialed it down too low. We need to dial it back up a little bit. And you will have to readjust after Q1. Take a look. We're going to take a look. What worked? What didn't work? Where did we think we were going to do well? And then all of a sudden it just kind of like fell through the floor because we cut back a little bit too much, right? If you get so hyper-focused, you may miss out on something else, right? So really be keeping track of those things. And then if you see something fall, be ready to make those adjustments. We're all gonna have to be very agile next year to figure out what's working, what's not. If, so don't wait to make adjustments.
What
I think
about
really
for,
understanding those touch points and what's working, but then if you realize I've gotten way too hyper focused and now it's swinging the other way, what's making that, right? How do I bring it back?
Yeah, I know for a lot of management teams and senior leadership that I've worked with, like trying to connect the dots for them on things like value add content or top of the funnel activities, branding, stuff like that. Like trying to draw a direct line connection between that and revenue is challenging / not really possible in a lot of cases.
Right.
And so in a mindset of, hey, we need an ROI on everything, we got to dial back on anything that's not, and all of that stuff. And for people in roles like yourself and my experience and background, we know from experience, like you can't ignore those pieces, and if you do, then it's going to have impacts further down. But how do you actually get that into a place where senior leadership that's got such a focus on, like, we really got to get everything down, we got to trim all fat, we got to be able to prove that these activities are actually driving revenue and ROI? How do you protect those essential things that aren't as clearly connected in their minds?
Because you label it as an essential touch point for your DG function, right? And you say, this is how this is supporting this DG campaign, or this is how this is supporting this outcome. And if we don't have this, then there's no meat. These things will drop if you don't have that first connection point. You have to constantly show how it works together and make a dashboard, right? This leads to this. So this is why our funnel works this way, so that everyone, in sales, everyone, your CEO, your president, your CFO, especially your CFO, really understands, right? It's not just about numbers on a page, right? We've all done models and things like that. It's not just the numbers on the page, right? We know that as market, like you said, Jason, we know that if we don't have these other things, they're just numbers on a page. Anyone can make up a model and say, we're going to do this, right? So you have to look at historical run rates. You have to constantly keep everybody educated on this is how it's working for us. And when we report successes, we look at the numbers, but we also say, because this campaign helped us, because this content or this awareness play brought us, our branded searches are up. Why? Because we did this. And because branded searches are up, we got more form films from Website Direct. And that is something that you can bring to a CFO and they're like, oh, I get it. Okay, great. Yes, we should be, investing in organic content because that's helping SEO, right? So you have to frame it. It's on you as a marketer, frame it in that way to say, this is why it's valuable and this is how it's supporting the business. If you don't do that, then they're not going to understand. It's your job to educate everybody. That's, I think, the hardest thing to do, right? But if you've been doing it from the beginning, when you get to a time like this, doesn't become a contentious conversation.
Yeah, and it's funny, since coming on here at Rev Genius, it's a conversation that I'm getting to have in a different context, but with partners. Because of course, most of our partners come in looking for exposure, brand awareness, lead generation. But it's been very heavily on like the lead generation side.
Yeah.
And so they're looking for, I'm going to generate X number of leads at this cost per lead, and then I'm going to pass that to my sales team, and they're going to call on them. They're going to close X number of accounts. And given background and experience and knowing how tenuous it is to go from like top of the funnel content like a webinar to a closed deal, it's one of the things that I'm actually trying to educate partners on. Of hey, you actually need to do this more comprehensively. Like we can build in touches and programs that are for brand awareness, for then education and getting them to understand like the pain points and the solutions are out there and stuff like that. And then ultimately driving that to like more high quality, bottom of the funnel, engaged content, like, hey, let's get together and have a dinner with, our top, 12 prospects and stuff like that. But it's been kind of interesting doing that from a third party standpoint into companies as opposed to being inside of it, trying to do that education.
I think you bring up an important point, right? Is people look at the channels, right? What I really educate on is high intent behavior. Like you said, somebody comes in a webinar, you don't know what their intent is. It's usually low intent, right? So what do you serve up so that you can say this is high intent? Because somebody's high intent, that that's why PPC search paid is the best channel, right? It's always the highest converting. Why? Because people are actually searching. They're looking for, in our case, like looking for a global payment solution, or they're interested. They're already self-searching, so they are in it. But if somebody signs up for a webinar, maybe they just wanted to know and become knowledgeable about a topic, or they wanted the CPE credit. But then you need to serve them something to show that high intent. So it's really important people understand, hey, just because we bring in something from the webinar, that's a different qualified opportunity that's going to qualify. It's going to qualify. Less of those are going to qualify as a qualified lead for SDRs than something coming in from PPC, right? Because those people are searching. So we need to do something else to figure out that intent. So I think people should understand, like, what is the behavior? And then what are you doing to act on that behavior? And that's going to help you prioritize, right? So that's why I talk about not about past leads as much, but we talk about qualified opportunities and then bookings, right? And I really look at that as our measure versus just past leads. Because we can buy leads all the time. We can buy lots of lists, we can do lots of different things and be like, here you go, here's like a gazillion leads, enjoy, but that's probably not the right thing, right? So what are some things you're finding as you're heading into next year? Would love to hear some of that. What do you think, am I staying up at the, what else should keep me up at night, or what are you finding?
Yeah, I think, conversations we're hearing often are around, obviously same type of stuff you're talking about. How do we get more lean? How do we get more efficient, more effective, needing to focus on ROI and stuff that's tied closer to revenue. Common themes that we're hearing a lot of is on the outbound demand gen side of things, really struggling these days. Which is where we have more and more people sort of talking about aligning, outbound SDR, BDR functions with demand gen more than sales, so that they can work together. And I've, personal experience in that space. Like before all of the slowdown happened, I was struggling with a whole, entire career's worth of experience of running BDR teams, getting a BDR team without that support and tight alignment to be effective at all. And so it's not surprising to me that a lot of companies are coming to that conclusion, because I think it's been that way for a few years. Beyond that, trying to think, there was one that I was going to go with, and I can't remember. I'm spacing on it for some reason. But yeah, just generally getting a lot tighter with what they're doing, getting better aligned with it, and just, also trying to figure out what's going to be working, not only from an outbound standpoint, but also from a demand gen inbound standpoint, because so much has just gotten overdone and oversaturated. Like, webinars, virtual events, like there's so many of those hitting our inboxes on any day. It's harder than ever to get into somebody's inbox. There's more, noise that's out there and stuff like that. And so I think you really nailed the answer to a lot of that stuff, which is intent signals. And getting better and clearer and more sophisticated with, finding those intent signals. And, one of the biggest ones for me that I'm seeing more and more is getting sophisticated to the point of engineering the intent signals. So, trying to get away from like, hey, we're doing lead scoring, or we're trying to look at somebody that's gotten to a threshold or whatever, but instead, driving people to a, an engineered conversion point or engineered, intent signal that you've built sort of from the ground up to say like, yeah, if they're taking this action, it's a pretty good indication this is going to be highly engaged or high intent.
Yeah, because it's hard. You can pass like 1,000 leads and it's all webinar. It's like, well, which ones of those are actually the people that are interested? It's probably a lot less, right? And then if you're asking your BDRs, SDRs to sift through that, that's a lot of time. If you can help with some of the sifting, right? And you said with those, like, and so like we use like 6 Sense, for example, right? And we really rely on that. We say, okay, something's been sitting there and now they have intent. We need to act on it. And if somebody hasn't acted on it in a week or two, then we need to put some ABM behind it so we can keep that person warm and continue to figure out the intent. And then once if they do an action, it gets put up on the top and someone can action it right away, right? So you don't lose somebody either.
Yep. Jared, we've got an event coming up right after this one, so we'll need to wrap it a few minutes early, but we got time for 1 or 2 more quick items if you want to toss something out.
I mean, we've just learned so much from you. I as much as we could in 42 minutes or so, but wanted to learn more about you. Like, who are you? You said 20 years. I got that, but wanted to expound on that more. Like, what led you to today with everything that you are professionally?
I think I did a lot of theater growing up because I was shy. Nobody on my team believes me now. But
the irony.
I know the irony of it all. But it's I started with theater, but I also have a science degree. It was pre-med, so I did both. So it's left brain, right brain, which I think for marketers today that's what it's about, bringing together data plus art. It's a science and an art, and I love doing that. And so that's, where my brain goes. It's like, how do you have the creative lead to business and outcomes? I love, getting the results, but it's, what are the creative aspects also? We don't want to forget that about marketing because it is also an art form. Don't forget that. Even in a recession, it's still a bit, it's data driving the business, but an art form. So that's left brain, right brain is really important to me. And that's what drives me as a marketer. Building teams and, having, have people help me in my career. I really believe in paying it forward. And so mentoring, if, you've achieved some success in your career, even early on, when you become a manager, how do you make sure you can bring those folks along with you, right? If you know good people, how do you help grow them? How do you help others, where you were? I was somewhere and I didn't know what I was doing. So somebody had to help me out, right? So think about the lessons you've learned, how you can help others. I think that is really important, part of my career that I enjoy is mentoring and also, helping others' careers grow. I think it's really important. And thirdly, I'm a soccer mom. So I have an 11-year-old son and his name is Kai. And I do a lot of soccer on the weekends. I don't play soccer. I didn't know a lot about soccer, but I do now. And the World Cup is going on right now. So that's all the rage in my home. So.
I am right there with you on the soccer parent side. So, my 13-year-old is heavy into it.
We had a conversation internally yesterday about red flag, yellow flag, red card, yellow card, because we were tossing. Jason tossed a GIF into the Slack group, like calling foul, I guess, and and one of our teammates didn't really know the sports part of it, and then it opened up a bigger conversation about cards versus flags versus all of this.
I might have ordered some flags from Amazon for future conversations.
I'm so happy that we're all the same level of sanity on this team.
And more people are watching soccer now. It's like everybody's watching it. Even at my son's school, they actually at lunch had the World Cup on, which I don't think that didn't happen. It was like the World Series or something. So I think the sports is also evolving. It's been really big globally, but I think it's becoming bigger in the United States as well. So that's exciting.
It's the most watched sports event on earth, right? Like, and it's like a multiple of the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah. Well, before we wrap, let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah,
you can find me on LinkedIn at Amisha Gandhi. Just my name.
Perfect, easy enough. All right. Anything else, Jared?
No, that's it. Thank everybody for coming. Thank you so much, Amisha, for coming here. We look forward to staying in touch. Definitely follow Amisha, get in touch with her. She's going to have a ton of great insights, and if she has any bandwidth, maybe even mentor. I don't want to plug that. We talked about that for a second, but could lead you to somebody good for you, I'm sure.
Yes. And then I look forward to learning from others too, because we have to learn from each other. Not everyone knows everything, right? We can't. And so I'll probably be calling Jason to pick his brain too.
Please
That
do.
would be rad.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for showing up for your first time or the next time, and we'll be here again next week. So thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks.
For having me. Bye-bye.